The small town was always busy. But there was one little restaurant tucked between two tall buildings that everyone seemed to know about. It wasn't fancy or expensive. The walls were painted in warm colors. The wooden tables had small scratches that told stories of years of meals shared there. The smells that came from the kitchen were inviting, freshly baked bread, herbs, spices, and sauces simmering slowly. It was the kind of place where people felt at home the moment they walked in. Among the staff, there was a young woman who had been working there for years. She wasn't loud or seeking attention. She didn't wear flashy clothes or speak in a way that demanded notice. She was quiet, focused, and she loved cooking more than anything else in the world. Every morning she would arrive before the others, tying her apron tightly, washing her hands carefully, and making sure every ingredient was ready. For her, cooking wasn't just a job. It was an art, a language, a way to tell a story without speaking a word. Her family had owned the restaurant for decades, but it had never grown into a big, famous place. It was the kind of spot people came to if they wanted something comforting and real. The young woman had learned everything from her grandmother, who had taught her how to balance flavors, how to smell the right moment to pull something from the oven, and how to taste a sauce and know what it was missing. But despite all her skills, she often felt invisible. Customers would praise the food, sometimes even asking who made it, but they never noticed her. Most of the credit went to the head chef or the owners, and she didn't complain. She simply kept working, believing that her dedication was its own reward. The restaurant had a regular rhythm. Mornings were slow, afternoons picked up with lunch orders, and evenings were busy with families and small groups celebrating birthdays or anniversaries. Every day felt the same until one morning, a notice arrived that made everyone stop what they were doing. The manager held up a piece of paper, and his voice trembled slightly as he read it. "There's going to be a very special guest next week," he said. "A billionaire is coming to dine here. Yes, one of the richest people in the world will be here." For a moment, no one spoke. Then the kitchen erupted in whispers, laughter, and nervous excitement. Everyone wanted to impress him, but the young woman stayed calm. She nodded silently, continuing to chop vegetables as if nothing had happened. Inside, though, her heart was racing. She had never imagined that someone so powerful would walk through the door of this little restaurant, a place she had grown up in and poured her heart into every day. The days leading up to his visit were filled with nervous energy. The head chef walked around with a sharp look, instructing everyone to clean every corner, polish the silverware, and make sure every dish looked perfect. The young woman watched quietly, preparing her ingredients with precision, mentally planning the special dish she wanted to make. It wasn't flashy or complicated, but it was her grandmother's recipe, one she had worked on for years, adding her own touch. She believed in its taste, in the way it could make someone pause and remember something beautiful, even if they didn't know why. As the day approached, the staff began to imagine what it would be like to have a billionaire taste their food. Some thought about tips, some thought about fame, and others just wanted to impress for the sake of pride. The young woman thought differently. She didn't care about money or recognition. She just wanted to cook something that would make someone feel something real, something from the heart. The morning of the visit arrived, and the restaurant felt different. The usual calm had turned into a tense anticipation. The staff moved quickly, arranging flowers on tables, polishing glasses, and making sure every plate was spotless. The young woman tied her apron, washed her hands, and took a deep breath. She felt a strange mixture of fear and excitement. Fear because she could fail, excitement because she might finally have the chance to show what she could do. When the billionaire arrived, the entire staff stiffened. He wasn't flashy or loud. He walked in quietly, with a calm confidence that seemed to fill the room. His presence alone made people take notice. He shook hands politely, smiled slightly, and sat down at the table the manager had prepared. Everyone knew that this meal could change their lives. No one knew how. The first dishes were served, and the billionaire tasted them politely, nodding here and there, but not showing much emotion. Some of the staff began to worry. Was the food not good enough? Had they missed something? The young woman stayed in the kitchen, her hands moving steadily as she prepared her special dish. She thought about every step, every ingredient, every spice, and every way the flavors would come together. She didn't rush. She didn't panic. She simply focused on making it perfect. Finally, the moment came. The dish she had prepared with so much care was placed in front of the billionaire. He picked up his fork and took a bite. For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then his eyes widened slightly, and he paused. The taste had surprised him. It wasn't just good. It was remarkable. It was a flavor he hadn't expected, a combination that felt familiar yet new. The room seemed to hold its breath. The young woman watched from the corner, trying to stay invisible, but her heart was pounding so loudly she was sure he could hear it. She couldn't move her eyes from him, couldn't look away. Something inside her told her that this moment was important, more than any praise or tip or recognition she had ever received. The billionaire put down his fork and looked around. He asked, with a voice calm but carrying a hint of curiosity, "Who made this?" The question hung in the air like a spark waiting to catch fire. The staff froze. They exchanged nervous glances. Everyone assumed that the head chef had made it, or perhaps one of the senior cooks. But the young woman felt something shift inside her. She knew it was her dish, and she also knew that she had to answer. She stepped forward slowly, her hands slightly trembling, but her voice steady. "I did," she said softly. The room fell silent. No one expected a quiet young woman in the corner to claim the dish that had impressed a billionaire. Her words seemed to hang in the air, clear and true. For a moment, the billionaire simply looked at her. Then, slowly, a small smile appeared on his face. It wasn't a broad smile, but it was enough to make her feel a warmth she had never known before. The silence in the room was broken by whispers, some of surprise, some of admiration. The head chef raised his eyebrows slightly, a subtle acknowledgement of her talent. The other staff members exchanged glances, now seeing her in a different light. In that moment, the young woman realized something important. Recognition didn't always come from the people who usually gave it. Sometimes, it came from the most unexpected places. From people who had the power to change your life in ways you couldn't imagine. And sometimes, it came because you were brave enough to speak the truth and claim. What was yours? She continued to watch as the billionaire took another bite of her dish, savoring it slowly, as if trying to understand why it felt so special. She felt a quiet pride, not loud or boastful, but deep and real. For years she had worked unnoticed, pouring her heart into meals no one would ever remember. But now, in this little restaurant in a small town, someone powerful and important had truly seen her work. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Customers came and went, but the young woman barely noticed them. She had experienced something more significant than anything she had imagined. She had learned that talent, humility, and courage could shine even in the smallest, quietest moments. And she had learned that sometimes the world notices in its own way, often when you least expect it. That evening, as she washed the dishes and cleaned the kitchen, she thought about the moment she had stepped forward. She thought about the taste, the pause, the question, and the silent acknowledgement that had passed between her and the billionaire. She realized that this was only the beginning. The world was bigger than she had ever imagined, and now she had taken the first step towards showing it her truth. One dish at a time. The next morning, the restaurant felt alive in a way it hadn't before. People were talking about the billionaire's visit as if it had already changed everything. Staff whispered excitedly in corners, replaying the moment when he had tasted the special dish. The young woman walked through the kitchen quietly, washing vegetables and preparing sauces, her heart still buzzing from the previous day. She felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. Something had shifted, even though nothing official had happened yet. The head chef came over, clapping his hands lightly. "Today we need to be sharper than ever," he said, his tone firm, but with a hint of admiration. "He might come back. We need to make sure everything is perfect." Everyone nodded, some with nervous smiles, others with anxious expressions. The young woman simply went back to her station, letting her hands move naturally as she chopped and stirred. Her mind wasn't on the praise or the attention. It was on the food, on every flavor and every detail. She had learned early that rushing, worrying, or thinking about recognition could ruin a dish. As she worked, a thought crossed her mind. What if he didn't return? What if this was a one-time moment and no one ever remembered her name again? She pushed the thought aside quickly. Worry didn't belong in the kitchen. She focused on the ingredients in front of her, on the smells and textures, on the way the sauce thickened just right. Cooking had always been a safe place for her, a place where she could control something even if the rest of the world seemed uncertain. By mid-afternoon, a new kind of energy had filled the restaurant. The usual customers arrived, chatting and laughing, but there was an added curiosity in their eyes. They had heard about the billionaire, and some even asked if he had really tasted the food. The young woman smiled quietly when they asked, but she didn't answer directly. She didn't want the moment to become a story of gossip. For her, it was something personal, something that mattered deeply because of the pride it brought. It's not the attention. Later, the manager came into the kitchen with a note. He called, the manager said, handing it over. He wants to schedule another visit. He said something about wanting to see the kitchen and meet the person who made that dish. The young woman's hands froze on the chopping board. She looked at the note, then at the manager. Me, she asked softly. He nodded with a small smile. The next few hours were a whirlwind. The staff hurried to prepare for the possibility of a second visit. Tables were rearranged, the floors were scrubbed, and every utensil and dish was polished until it shined. The young woman felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety. She had never been in a position like this before. She had always worked quietly, behind the scenes, never expecting recognition or praise from someone so important. Now the thought of meeting him again made her stomach twist, but it also gave her a strange confidence. She had made something he appreciated once. She could do it again. When the billionaire arrived, the atmosphere in the restaurant changed completely. People held their breath as he walked past the tables, his presence commanding attention without any effort. He smiled politely at the staff and then turned to the young woman who was standing quietly near the kitchen. I hear you are the one behind the dish, he said. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of curiosity and expectation. The young woman nodded. Yes, she said softly. Her voice was steady, but her heart raced. She had not expected to speak directly to him. She had always imagined that her work might be noticed in passing, but never that someone so important would look her in the eyes and ask about it. He motioned for her to follow him to a small side table, away from the customers. I want to see how you work, he said. I want to understand the process. She felt a mix of pride and nervousness as she followed him. The kitchen suddenly seemed larger, brighter, and filled with a kind of tension she had never experienced before, as she began to prepare a dish in front of him. He watched every movement carefully. He didn't speak much, only observing how she measured, stirred, and tasted. She realized that he wasn't just interested in the end result. He wanted to see the care, the precision, the attention to detail. Every step mattered. She explained her process quietly, not to show off, but because he asked questions genuinely. Why this spice? He asked once. Why not add a little more of this ingredient? She answered simply, explaining what her grandmother had taught her and why each choice mattered. Hours passed, and the billionaire tasted everything she made. Each time he paused, closed his eyes, and considered the flavor. He asked thoughtful questions, not just about ingredients, but about technique, timing, and presentation. The young woman realized something remarkable. He respected skill, dedication, and thoughtfulness. He wasn't impressed by wealth or fame. He was impressed by care and authenticity. During a short break, she sat quietly at a corner of the kitchen. The staff were whispering among themselves, watching nervously. She took a deep breath, feeling a strange sense of calm. For years, she had worked tirelessly, unnoticed, pouring herself into every dish. Now, for the first time, someone powerful had truly seen her effort. She didn't feel pride in the way others might expect. She felt validation, a deep sense that her work mattered. When the billionaire returned to taste the next dish, he leaned closer. This is extraordinary, he said quietly, almost as if sharing a secret. I've tasted many dishes around the world, but this, it's unique. Who taught you? The young woman smiled softly. My grandmother, she replied. She taught me everything I know, nodded, listening carefully, his expression thoughtful. She realized that he wasn't just complimenting her skill. He was recognizing the story behind the food, the years of learning, the dedication, and the love poured into every dish by the end of the visit. The billionaire asked her to prepare one more dish, something that represented her style, her signature. She thought carefully, choosing the recipe she had refined over years, the one that always brought her joy to make. She worked steadily, measuring, stirring, tasting, adjusting. When she finally presented it, he took a bite slowly, savoring every flavor. Then he put down his fork, his expression unreadable for a moment, before breaking into a small smile. "This is perfect," he said. "This is exactly why I wanted to see how you work. You have something special, something rare. Most people focus on presentation or gimmicks, but you focus on heart, and that shows." The young woman felt a warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't just about being praised. It was about being seen, truly seen, for who she was and the effort she had given her entire life. As he left, he turned to her once more. "I want to work with you in the future," he said. "I have projects where someone with your skill and integrity could make a real difference. I hope you will consider it." The young woman nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and disbelief. She had never imagined that someone so important would not only notice her but want to collaborate with her. After the billionaire left, the kitchen was buzzing with energy. The staff talked excitedly about what had happened, praising her skill and bravery. She remained quiet, cleaning up and putting away ingredients. She didn't need their praise to feel fulfilled. What mattered was the experience, the understanding that her work, her dedication, and her heart had been recognized in a way that felt genuine and powerful. That evening, she sat alone in the empty restaurant for a few moments, thinking about the day. She realized that this was only the beginning. Life had a way of opening doors when you least expected it, but it also required courage, persistence, and authenticity. She had stepped into the kitchen each day quietly, without expectation, and now the world had noticed. It was a reminder that true talent didn't need to shout to be heard. As she turned off the lights and walked home, she thought about the future. There would be challenges, new opportunities, and perhaps even doubts along the way. But she also knew something powerful. Her work mattered, and her dedication could create moments that people remembered, moments that could change her life forever. And that thought filled her with a quiet joy, one that made her feel ready for whatever came next. The days after the billionaire's visit felt different for the young woman. The restaurant had returned to its normal rhythm, but now there was a quiet excitement in the air, almost like electricity. Staff moved with more energy, speaking in hushed tones about what had happened and what might come next. Some customers even asked if the wealthy man would return. The young woman tried not to think about it too much. She had learned early that worrying didn't help in the kitchen. She focused on her work, chopping, stirring, and tasting with care, letting the rhythm of cooking keep her grounded, yet deep inside. She couldn't stop thinking about the moment he had asked who made the dish. That simple question had been life-changing. She had expected a polite compliment, maybe a nod or a smile, but not genuine curiosity. And she had never imagined that he would want to see her work again, watch her prepare dishes, and even talk to her about technique. It had left a mark she couldn't ignore, feeling that perhaps her life was about to shift in ways she didn't yet understand. One afternoon, the manager approached her quietly, holding a message. "He wants to meet you again," he said, glancing around to make sure no one else was listening. "He's planning a private tasting tomorrow. He wants to try some new recipes and see what you can create." Her hands froze for a moment as she took the note. Her mind raced, imagining the possibilities. She had never been asked to create something entirely on her own for someone so important. The thought was thrilling, but also nerve-racking. She spent the rest of the day preparing mentally. She reviewed her recipes, thought about combinations of flavors, and considered techniques she had learned over years in the kitchen. She knew this was a chance not only to impress, but also to show herself what she was truly capable of. As the evening approached, she carefully organized her ingredients, making sure everything was fresh and ready. There was a sense of calm determination in her movements. She had always believed that preparation was the key to success, and now that belief felt more important than ever. The next morning, when she arrived at the restaurant, The staff were already buzzing with energy. The kitchen was spotless, shining and smelling like freshly baked bread and herbs. The head chef gave her a brief nod, a silent acknowledgement of her talent and importance in this moment. Other staff members whispered their support, some offering small smiles, others giving encouraging glances. She felt a strange mix of pride and nervousness. This was her moment to create something extraordinary. When the billionaire arrived, he didn't walk through the restaurant as casually as last time. His presence seemed heavier, more focused. He looked around with a quiet intensity, observing the staff and the restaurant itself, but his eyes always returned to her. "I've been thinking about your work," he said calmly, yet there was a weight to his words. "I want to see how far your talent can go." She nodded, feeling a sense of responsibility settle over her. This was more than just cooking. It was a test, a challenge, a chance to show what she could really do. He followed her into a small kitchen space prepared for the private tasting. It was quiet, with only the sounds of knives chopping, pans sizzling, and the occasional clink of a spoon. She felt a deep focus wash over her as she began preparing her first dish. She measured each ingredient carefully, tasting and adjusting as she went. He watched silently, leaning slightly forward, his eyes attentive but calm. She could feel his curiosity, a desire to understand not just the flavors, but the method, the thought process, and the intention behind every choice as she worked. She began to explain some of her techniques. "I like to let the ingredients speak for themselves," she said softly. "I add only what enhances the natural flavor. I try not to overpower the dish." He nodded thoughtfully. "I can see that," he said. "It's rare to find someone who cooks with patience and respect for the ingredients. Most people rush or overcomplicate." She felt a small smile form on her face. He understood. He wasn't impressed by flashy presentation or gimmicks. He valued care, skill, and authenticity. The first dish was finished, and he tasted it slowly, savoring each bite. For a long moment, he said nothing, his expression unreadable. She held her breath, standing quietly nearby, feeling every second stretch out. Then he finally looked up, his eyes bright. "This is remarkable," he said. "You have a rare gift. Most people don't understand what it takes to make something taste like this. It's not just flavor. It's balance, thought, and heart." She felt warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't just praise. It was recognition. He had truly seen her skill, her care, and the love she put into her work. She continued preparing dish after dish, each one more intricate than the last. He tasted each with the same focused attention, asking thoughtful questions about technique, ingredients, and presentation. Sometimes he suggested small changes, not because her dishes were lacking, but because he was curious about her approach. "Why not try a slightly different herb here?" he asked once. She explained her reasoning, showing why she made each decision. He listened carefully, his expression thoughtful. It was clear that he valued not only the result, but the process, the thought behind the creation. As hours passed, the young woman felt a growing confidence. She realized that this wasn't just about impressing him. It was about exploring her own abilities. She experimented with flavors she had never tried in a professional setting, combining textures and spices in ways that felt risky but exciting. Each time he tasted a dish, he paused, closed his eyes, and considered the flavors carefully. His reactions were subtle, but meaningful: raised eyebrow, a quiet nod, or a soft smile. She learned quickly that he was not easily impressed, and yet his attention made her want to push herself further. During a short break, she sat quietly in a corner, sipping water and thinking about the day so far. She realized that this experience was more than just recognition. It was a lesson in courage, patience, and belief in herself. For years, she had worked quietly, unnoticed, pouring her heart into every dish. Now, someone who had experienced the world, someone powerful and influential, was acknowledging her skill. She felt a quiet pride, not boastful, but deep and grounding. When she returned to prepare the next dish, the billionaire leaned closer, his curiosity evident. "This one is special," she said softly, smiling. "It's a recipe I've been refining for years. It's close to my heart." She worked carefully, measuring, tasting, and adjusting until it was exactly right. When she placed it before him, he took a bite slowly, savoring the flavors. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he looked at her, eyes wide with admiration. This is extraordinary," he said quietly. "It's unlike anything I've tasted. You have a rare talent. Most people can't create this level of depth and balance." The young woman felt her heart swell. For the first time, she felt truly seen, not for her position in the kitchen, not for her quiet work ethic, but for the skill, thought, and care she had invested in every dish. It was a recognition that went beyond words, one that validated years of dedication and countless hours spent perfecting her craft. As the session ended, the billionaire stood up and walked toward her. "I want to work with you," he said calmly. "I have projects where someone with your talent and integrity could make a real difference. I hope you will consider it." She nodded, feeling a mixture of awe, excitement, and disbelief. This was more than an opportunity. It was a chance to take her skills to a level she had never imagined. After he left, the young woman returned to her station, quietly cleaning up and putting away ingredients. The staff were buzzing with excitement, whispering about what had happened. Some of them looked at her with new respect, others with curiosity and admiration. She smiled quietly, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. She didn't need anyone else's approval to feel proud. The experience had taught her that true recognition came from the people who could see her skill and heart, not from applause or gossip. That evening, as she walked home, she thought about the day's events. She realized that life often had a way of presenting opportunities when least expected. But it also required courage, focus, and authenticity. She had shown herself what she was capable of, and now the world had taken notice. It was a reminder that talent and dedication could create moments that changed everything. Sometimes in a single day, she also thought about the future. There would be challenges, new expectations, and perhaps doubts along the way. But she knew one thing for certain: her work mattered. And her heart and skill could leave a mark that people would remember. She felt a quiet determination settle over her, a readiness to face whatever came next with patience, courage, and dedication. The days that followed the billionaire's second visit were a whirlwind of anticipation and quiet reflection for the young woman. The restaurant had returned to its usual pace, but now there was a different energy in the air. Staff moved with more purpose, whispering in corners, sharing glances that carried excitement and disbelief. They talked about the billionaire, about the dishes he had praised, and about the young woman who had quietly impressed someone so powerful. She moved through the kitchen with her usual calm, though inside her mind raced. She couldn't stop thinking about what had happened, and more importantly, what might happen next. She kept herself busy, focusing on the meals she prepared for everyday customers, knowing that each dish was still important, but a part of her mind wandered to the possibilities. Could this really lead to something bigger? Could her skills finally open doors she had only dreamed about? At times, the excitement made her anxious. She had spent so long working quietly, unnoticed, that suddenly being in the spotlight felt strange. But the thought of creating something meaningful for someone who truly appreciated her work pushed her forward. One afternoon, the manager called her aside with a serious look. "He's coming again," he said quietly. "He wants to meet you in front of the whole team this time. He wants to see how you handle everything when everyone is watching." Her stomach tightened. She had always been comfortable in the quiet of the kitchen. But now she was being asked to perform under pressure. In front of colleagues and staff who had never seen her work so closely, she took a deep breath, reminding herself that she had faced bigger challenges in silence before. The day arrived, and the restaurant was busier than ever. The staff were nervous, moving quickly to ensure everything was perfect. Tables were set meticulously, dishes were polished, and the kitchen was spotless. The young woman tied her apron, washed her hands, and took a moment to steady herself. She focused on the rhythm she had known for years, the way chopping, stirring, tasting, and adjusting felt like second nature. She reminded herself that skill and patience were her strongest allies. When the billionaire arrived, the room seemed to shift. His presence was calm but commanding. He walked through the restaurant, observing everything with quiet attention, Staff held their breath as he approached the kitchen area, where the young woman was standing. "I want to see how you work when everyone is around," he said. His voice was steady, but it carried a sense of expectation. She nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and pressure. This was her chance to show not just her talent, but her composure under observation. The next morning, she arrived at a small private office where she was to meet the billionaire. He greeted her warmly, not with the formality of a powerful figure, but with genuine curiosity and interest. "I wanted to speak with you about a new opportunity," he said calmly. "I have been searching for someone who cooks not just with skill, but with heart. You have shown me that, and I believe you could make a real impact on a project I am starting." She listened carefully, her mind focused, but her heart racing. This was more than a job or a chance to gain recognition. This was a chance to share her passion on a larger stage, to create something meaningful beyond the walls of her small restaurant. He explained the project. A new type of culinary experience, one that would highlight young talent and authentic cooking. He wanted her to be part of it, to design dishes, teach techniques, and showcase creativity in a way that would inspire others. She felt a mixture of awe and humility. The opportunity was enormous, but it wasn't given lightly. He valued her skill, her authenticity, and her courage to step forward. She realized that this was a rare chance, one that could define the next chapter of her life. Over the following weeks, her routine shifted. She still worked in the restaurant, but now she was also collaborating on this new project. She experimented with new recipes, developed menus, and refined techniques that combined traditional flavors with her own unique style. Each day brought challenges, but she embraced them with the same dedication she had always shown. The billionaire visited often, tasting her creations, offering thoughtful advice, and encouraging her to push boundaries while remaining true to her instincts. The experience transformed her confidence. She began to see herself not just as a cook in a small kitchen, but as a creator, an innovator, and someone whose work could touch people's lives in meaningful ways. She learned that talent alone was not enough. Courage, persistence, and authenticity mattered just as much. Each dish she created became a reflection of herself, a story told through flavors, textures, and care. She found joy in knowing that what she made had purpose and resonance. Beyond immediate praise or attention, as the project progressed, the young woman began to receive recognition from people outside the restaurant. Influential chefs, culinary writers, and enthusiasts tasted her dishes and were impressed by the depth of her skill. Yet, she remained humble, focused on the process rather than the accolades. She remembered her grandmother's words about patience, respect, and integrity, and she carried those lessons into every creation. Her focus on authenticity, rather than seeking approval, became her defining trait. One afternoon, during a particularly busy tasting session, the billionaire watched her interact with other young chefs. She guided them patiently, sharing knowledge without arrogance, correcting mistakes without judgment, and encouraging experimentation. He observed her closely, noting her leadership, her ability to inspire others, and the calm confidence with which she carried herself. He realized that her talent extended beyond the kitchen. She could teach, inspire, and lead. She had the potential to change the culinary world not just with her dishes, but with her influence and approach. The young woman herself noticed the transformation within. She had started as someone quiet, unnoticed, and hesitant to claim recognition. But through patience, dedication, and a willingness to embrace opportunities, she had grown into a confident professional who could step into challenges without fear. She understood that recognition and success were not merely handed to people. They were earned through consistent effort, courage, and authenticity. Weeks turned into months, and the project grew. The young woman's influence became central, her recipes and ideas forming the foundation of a new culinary experience that celebrated creativity and care. The billionaire remained a mentor, a guide who challenged her while respecting her instincts. Together, they created something unique. A blend of tradition and innovation that showcased not only skill, but heart. The restaurant where it all began continued to thrive. Her work there remained deeply personal, a reminder of where she had started and the lessons she had learned. She never forgot the quiet mornings spent chopping vegetables, stirring sauces, and tasting carefully. Those moments had built her skill and patience, preparing her for opportunities she could not have imagined. She understood that success was not about rushing or seeking attention, but about mastering your craft, being true to yourself, and embracing challenges when they arrived. One evening, after a particularly successful tasting event, she sat quietly in the empty restaurant, reflecting on the journey. She thought about the first time the billionaire had tasted her dish, how he had asked who made it, and how she had stepped forward with a simple, truthful answer. That moment had changed everything. It had led to recognition, opportunity, and a deeper understanding of herself. She felt gratitude for her grandmother, for her family, for the years of quiet dedication, for the chance to show her talent to the world. As she looked ahead, she saw endless possibilities. There would be challenges, new projects, and moments of doubt, but she felt ready. Her skill, her patience, and her authenticity had carried her this far, and she knew they would continue to guide her. She realized that the most important moments were often quiet ones, where dedication met opportunity and courage met recognition. In the end, the young woman understood that success was not just about being noticed or praised. It was about using your talent, heart, and perseverance to create something meaningful. It was about stepping forward when the world asked a question and answering with honesty and confidence. Her journey had started in a small, humble kitchen, and it had led to opportunities she could never have imagined. Yet through it all, she remained grounded. Focused on her craft and her passion, she smiled softly, thinking about the future. The project with the billionaire was just the beginning. She would continue to cook, to innovate, and to inspire. She knew that every dish she made could carry a story, a lesson, or a moment of joy to someone's life. And she understood that the quiet, patient dedication she had cultivated over the years was what had made all of this possible. For the first time, she felt a sense of true freedom, not just the freedom to create, but the freedom to believe in herself and her abilities. She had learned that recognition, opportunity, and success often came when you least expected them, but they always rewarded those who worked with care, honesty, and heart. The journey had been long and full of unseen effort, but every moment had mattered. She left the restaurant that night, the streets quiet and calm. Her mind was alive with possibilities, her heart full of gratitude and excitement. She knew that life would continue to present challenges, but she felt ready to meet them. She had learned the value of patience, authenticity, and courage. She had learned that stepping forward, even quietly, could change everything. And she knew that her story, her dishes, her dedication, and her heart would continue to touch lives in ways she had only begun to imagine. The young woman had grown, not just as a chef, but as a person. She had discovered that talent combined with perseverance and honesty could create extraordinary moments. She had learned that recognition was not simply about being seen, but about being understood. And she had learned that courage, even in small, quiet forms, could open doors to a future that once seemed impossible. And so, she continued forward, ready for every opportunity, challenge, and creation that lay ahead. Confident in her skill, her heart, and her unwavering dedication. She knew that her journey had only just begun, and that the world had only started to see the depth of what she could offer.